Boy, it's amazing that Tom Telesco has been the GM for the Chargers going on his 11th year.
Wow.
You would think that they would have some sort of like tremendous history in 11 years. He has got to be the luckiest 11-year GM I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
He's had some good moments, but I mean, but that's because of the way the organization's run. You know, they just there's not like the leadership just isn't there. But look, they got poor cap space issues. You got to keep an eye on that. And then they had some really tough injuries that they had to overcome. They had the Slater kid early on with the bicep injury, and then their big time corner that they signed, J.C. Jackson, went down at mid-season. So they had a couple of those injuries that really hurt them. And of course, let's keep in mind they also had the injury to Bosa, so he really didn't even hardly play. And they still almost made it to the second round of the playoffs. Right. So we know the talent's there. As far as major needs, I don't think there's any question they still have to do something about more offensive linemen. Pipkins is a free agent, so fine, let him go. I mean, I don't even know what they would even, unless, you know, pay him $1 million, but he's not somebody that you really need to rely on. So maybe go out and get another right tackle. And then on defense, again, they've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. It's got to be defensive line, inside linebacker, one of the two or both, run-stopping talent. That's what they need. They need the combination of defensive line, inside linebacker, run-stopping players. And maybe even that's what they do with the first few picks.
Yeah, I mean, every year we're talking about the same thing with this team, is beef up the interior of the defensive line, find a better inside linebacker, and, you know, change up your scheme a little bit. I mean, sometimes when I watch these guys play, it's almost like they just don't care that they're opening up doors for the running game to run through. Is it a schematic thing? Is it a personnel thing? You know, I don't think their personnel is terrible up front, but there's a disconnect there between what they need to be and what they are. But that still, to me, remains the top need on the roster, is as long as you keep putting up run defense numbers that the Chargers are, that's always going to be my answer, because that it might not hurt you in the regular season as often or as much, but if you are a leaky run defense, especially in the middle, you're never going to go deep into the playoffs. Yeah. It just won't happen.
Too easy.
So,
it's where every defense begins,
right
in the middle.
Right.
All right, so look, Joseph Day at nose tackle is a nice little player. They did spend a 5th-round pick last year on the kid from UCLA. So do you think that they're okay there? If we're picking what they need to do, if they had to choose first round, do we pick an inside linebacker, which usually is not the way to go in the first round?
Right.
Or do we go with a defensive lineman? Because, again, that's the thing. Inside linebacker, nose tackle anyway, not usually going in the first round. So does that kind of answer my question? Did they just go defensive line, best defensive lineman? What do you think?
That would be the best move, in my opinion, partially because of they rotate their defensive linemen a lot. When the backups come in, second string, whatever you want to call them, it's a pretty significant drop-off. But also, I think it would help the pass rush, because I'm nervous about Bosa. I'm always nervous about whether or not he's going to stay on the field for the entire season. And if they have a different option inside that can take some pressure off him, it makes sense to kind of go there. But I don't want this pass rush specialist. It can't be a guy that's just a pass rusher. He's got to play some solid run defense as well.
I mean, they can sign one of those guys if they want for a year.
They could,
but
you're
right.
Will shake free for that role.
All right, so who would we be talking about? If we're talking about a 3-4 defensive lineman, who would we be at around 21? What do you think? What kind of player are we talking about?
I mean, Brian Breesky might be there from Clemson.
I think so.
I still think he might be. He's still, in my opinion, like that's his best role. 3-4 defensive end. You could shift.
I think that'd be a steal if they can get him at 21.
Yeah, it would be a good deal. I mean, the opinions on him are just, by the way, they're all over the place.
Okay.
Some are saying top 10, some are saying second
Okay.
round. So as of right now, and I've felt this way about him watching his tape. Now that that's where I'm starting my deep dive is up front. There's a lot of sloppiness to his game. He's got a very non-traditional body for the defensive tackle position. Leverage is poor. There are some issues in his game that if he doesn't fix, he will not be a factor. I mean, the get off is only going to get you so far when you're rushing the passer. I love the kid from USC. I keep bringing him up. Tuli Tuipulotu. 21 might be a little rich for him. I view him as more of like a top of the second round type.
Okay.
But talk about a guy that I'm saying, hey, someone that can make tackles in the backfield, rush the passer, line up in multiple spots. That's the guy. Morgan Fox is a free agent, plays the 3-4 DN role for them. I think that's an automatic transition for them. That if they just made that simple trade with those two, I think they come out on the stronger side.
Yeah, they got 3 defensive linemen right now, free agents, including Fox, as you mentioned. By the way, don't want to forget also, Salyer did a really good job as a 6th-round draft pick. I thought that was a steal anyway. I mean, so they got lucky there. But even if they feel he can slide into one of the spots, they still have to. It doesn't mean that they're done at tackle. So they still have to get another guy. And I think that's also, when you take a look at the offensive line, when you had the Slater injury and you're starting a rookie, and, I think Lindsley's done a nice job, but you're starting another. They actually started 2 rookies most of the season because Zion Johnson's there as well. So there was a lot of, there's too many changes up front. No cohesion.
Growing pains too.
Yeah. And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Look, I understand. I thought the idea was a smart one, using a 4th-round draft pick on a running back last year. The player I wasn't happy with. I just was not a big Isaiah Spiller fan coming into the draft, and nothing that he showed me last year changed my mind. I think they've got to find an impact running back to pair with Eckler like they had with Gordon, and then I think you got yourself the makings of a really dangerous offense, because when you take that out of the equation, it's just Eckler, and then throw in the fact that they weren't healthy at receiver, that's another aspect of their offense. They've got to do you think they decide, this is something for the Charger fans out there, do you think maybe they move on from Keenan Allen?
For financial reasons,
because if you look at it, what is his contract situation is he's got $15.5 and $18 million in the next 2 years. And the dead money is not that bad. It's 7 and a little under 3. That's not that bad. So do you move on?
Consider those numbers, and consider the fact that he's played 10 games this year. A couple years ago he missed 2. I mean, he was an Iron Man basically from 2017 to 2019, but then you start approaching age 30 you're a year away from that. He starts to slow down a little bit. I mean, he's effective when he's on the field, but when you consider the economic value of a contract, if you're afraid he's not going to be able to stay on the field at this point as a 31-year-old next year, that's a hefty price to pay. And like you said, that dead money is not something that would scare me away from doing it.
And the same thing, in my opinion, with Khalil Mack. Because, again, here's the thing with and I don't know what the consensus is with the fans. Let me know. But you look at, like, Pro Football Focus loves the guy. But I'm telling you, I watch all these Charger games, and I never hear his name. He doesn't do anything. It's like C.J. Mosley with the Jets. It's like, I don't want my big prized linebacker making plays behind the line, after the player has passed the line of scrimmage. I want, especially Khalil Mack, I want sacks. I want tackles for loss. I want pressures. And I just don't see that from him anymore. He's not, those stats have gone away the last couple of years. And I'm not going to pay a guy that's 31 years old, $17 million for the next 2 years. His dead cap space is, again, not that bad, at 9 this year and 4.5 the next. So I'd have to think really long and hard about both Khalil Mack and Keenan Allen, and maybe say, you know what, maybe it's time for us to use that money wisely and get younger. We're not rebuilding, but I just think that they're, maybe if they keep these guys, they're thinking, well, we can win a Super Bowl next year. And
Yeah.
I just don't know if they could win a Super Bowl next year. So if I think in Super Bowl in 2 years, then I'm thinking I'm moving on from those guys.
Right. No, I mean Chicago knew what they were doing in trading him, and it wasn't just because of the current level of play. It was just the economics. The contract's out of control, right? And I mean, he's one bad injury away from being a 32-year-old with a bad wheel, right? I mean, it's the name Khalil Mack just doesn't. You got to make sure it doesn't suck you in too much based on the fact that he was the defensive player of the year in 2016. It doesn't matter anymore. I think what he did 2 years ago doesn't matter anymore.
Yep.
So I agree that these high priced players that are swallowing up a bunch of cat on a team that has a lot of depth related issues, right? That's one thing about paying big money. We see that with the Rams to a few players. You can't build a deep team when you're playing multiple guys top money, and their biggest expense is coming up. I mean, Herbert's going to be due for a contract soon, so
And
I think
Eckler. Eckler's got to get paid too.
The sooner you cut bait with Mac, the better.
All right, so I think. Oh, by the way, also in the secondary, keep in mind they do have to re-sign Callahan. So if they don't, then
and Adderley,
they might have a nickel job that could be open.